Please welcome to the stage our moderator, Lisa Edwards, and panelists Sheila Marcello, Melody Mccluskey, and Jennifer Steinman.
Good morning, everyone. Is this on? Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. We have an amazing panel of women here, and I am going to ask all of you some important questions. So with that, let's just go ahead and get started. We are celebrating International Women's Day and in Women's History Month. Tell us, each of you maybe, about a trailblazing woman in your life, someone who influenced your career or your personal life in a meaningful way.
You want me to start?
Sure.
So I'm in the care space. I'm Sheila Marcello, founder and CEO of Care.com. There's an amazing woman named Pugh who started the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And what she really inspired me to do is to be proximate to the issues of what domestic caregivers go through every day, that they're not paid enough. They're paid on average $9 an hour versus golf caddies that are paid $17 an hour. It's a real shame. So she really started the initiative 20 years ago of creating domestic workers, the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, and it's now passed in 8 states. I've been there to really support her because as a business person in a public company, Cindy said, how do you use your voice? Especially for vulnerable populations that really need it because they lift up all of us in terms of a care infrastructure allowing us to work. So Pugh.
Mm-hmm.
I think a huge...
Maybe tell us who you are first.
Oh, I'm Melody Mccluskey. I have a company called Style Seat. We are a platform for entrepreneurs in the beauty space, hairstylists, barbers, makeup artists, estheticians to run and grow their business. And we're also a destination for clients to book. So we're a platform for mostly female entrepreneurs to grow their businesses. I think someone that I really admire is my mom. She was hugely influential for me growing up. You know, my dad is the one that made income for my family, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she was this incredible source of power. So even though she was creative and she was softer and very nurturing and she was an artist, I saw how powerful that was and how she always inspired me, and her strength and her family was always something that was really inspiring. I think she helped me realize you don't have to be masculine or exhibit masculine traits to be powerful. You can sort of have both, and that was a huge influence on me growing up.
That's great. Jen?
Hi, everyone. Isn't it amazing that we're here today? This is unbelievable. Jen Steinman from Deloitte, and really proud to be participating on this panel. So 2 people, one at work, and I started a few years back in my first big job, which was the chief people officer for Deloitte. And there was a woman who was the most senior woman at Deloitte at the time. And right around the year mark, I was getting a lot of pressure to do things that I didn't think were necessarily right for the organization. And she looked at me and she said, you know, are you gonna do what others want you to do, or are you gonna take this moment and be the leader that you think you need to be? And I think she said a couple of other choice words, including flushing the toilet if I didn't think it was worthwhile, kind of thing. And so, you know, I always have that in the back of my mind as I move forward, because I agree with Cindy. It's if you have the opportunity, you need to seize it. And then the second person is really my grandmother. So similar to you, my grandmother was first generation in the United States. She actually went to college, which was a big deal for our family at that time. And in our kitchen wall growing up, we had this poem called Invictus. And now it sits on my laptop, and I think about it every day. You know, the end of the poem goes, I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And so I always think about that in terms of how you work on a day-to-day basis.
Great, thank you. So maybe keep going, Jen, and we'll go back the other way. Tell us a little bit about how your company thinks about equality and what sort of tactics you all are using to achieve that.
Deloitte is a 150-year-old organization, and our first foray into the topic, which is now called equality, was in 1993 with the first women's initiative. And then in 1995, the first diversity initiative. And really, we're using the word initiative at the time. These words have changed over time, but we're still trying to achieve some of the same things. And so I think our journey has really been one of we push forward and then we plateau, and then we got to continue to push forward. And so today we really think about it in the context of how do we make sure that people feel included? How do we make sure that everybody has a voice? How do we make sure that people have the opportunities that are available to them, and that we celebrate the individual as well as the team contribution? So the words have changed. But I would say that some of the things that really we focus on today, we absolutely have programs in place, but it's much more of an organic feel now, and trying to get everyone to feel like they have a voice in shaping our future.
Sheila or Melody, from a women-owned business or founded business, how do you guys approach equality?
Equality for us is very important because from a just general human perspective, but also especially so in our business, because 75% of our customers on the professional side are women, and 50% of our customers are people of color. And so having a team that reflects and understands the community that we serve will make us better and stronger company. And that's always been very, very important to me. And I've said to my team that we will not rush into things. We will take the time and hire more slowly and be more thoughtful if that means that we have a more diverse team, because that will put us in a stronger position. The other thing that we do is we have a no negotiation policy around offers. So I had an experience early in my career where this was one of my first jobs that I had. The person that worked at the company was a very good negotiator, and I was not a very good negotiator. I was not being hired for a job of negotiation. It was a product role, but he negotiated me down to a salary that made me feel uncomfortable. And I was resentful of that, and it made me feel bad, especially since negotiation was not what I was hired for, and we shouldn't punish the people who are not as good at fighting for and demanding what they're worth when we're making hiring decisions. So we have a band. It is industry standard. We pick 80th percentile for payment and comp based on what that position is, and we have a no negotiation policy. So if someone wants something that's much higher outside of the band, they are not for our company. You have to sort of come in and be on board with the same rules that everyone else is on board for. I think it's helped us.
Great. How about you, Sheila?
Yeah, so I would say building on that, on our makeup. So the company was founded 12 years ago, and we have 3 female founders, women of color, of the 4. 30% of our we're now a public company, 30% of our board members are women, 30% people of color, 30% LGBT. More than 30% for each of those numbers, actually, because there's 8 of us. So really important to me to have that baseline. And then I think about equality in our product. How do we support that? So we have our Care at Work enterprise business that actually helps women work, because there's this codependency. You need great care to work, and you need to work to pay for great care. So it's embedded into the mission and the product that we do. And then it's how do we use our voice and our advocacy around equality? But how do we make it real, not just for signing Equal Pay Pledge in 2015, we were one of the first ones. We're also EDGE certified. Just like buildings are LEED certified, there's only 24 or so companies in the United States that are EDGE certified. It's economic dividends for gender diversity, and that's really important. But what are we doing for our CSR? So we train low-income immigrant women in different neighborhoods in numerous geographies and converting their homes to be family daycares, and we're tripling their income to actually take care of other people within the community. And in Europe, because we're in 20 countries, we're actually training women, refugees, to be caregivers. We call that Care Forward.
So really interesting, the level of diversity you got on the board. Was that very deliberate? Was that using sort of Rooney rules? How did you think about the board makeup, and did you specifically set out to make it diverse, or did it just sort of work out that way?
You know, it's interesting. I think that there's so much critique around unconscious biases. I wonder, because we were 3 women of color, it was such a consciousness around the importance of diversity and what it meant for us, that it's not like we searched out for these people. I also think Care.com is such a mission-driven company, and it's a level playing field because it's about humanity, that we attracted so many different types of people that wanted to be part of the mission. So, and we were conscious, but it wasn't because we were searching for it.
Right. So Jen, Deloitte Digital has been a great friend to events like this and a sponsor of this event. How is Deloitte approaching, you talked about it a little bit, but give us a little more on how you're approaching inclusion and why that's so important to the company.
Just out of curiosity, how many of you are millennials in the room? Yeah, so millennials are changing the face of business in the United States and across the globe. And so really what's happened at Deloitte over the last few years is we've had the opportunity to re-examine how we think about work, both full-time work, part-time work, on and off balance sheet teams. And we did a study a few years ago with the Billie Jean King Initiative that looked at millennials across the globe, about 3,000 people. And we found some pretty big differences in terms of how millennials both approach work and the subject of equality and inclusion. And the notion that I came away with from that was that how our millennials are coming into the workforce, plus those of us that are just a tiny bit older, and how we think about it, it's all important. It's all important. It's not an either or, it's a plus. But some of the things that we need to think about as a result are millennials come to it from an experience perspective. What are the experiences I can gain in the workforce? They come at it from the perspective of individuals being really important, as well as teams being really important. And so a lot of what we've done around inclusion is to start to use those kind of words in order to have people feel connected, give them the opportunities to grow. And so we're still looking at things like representation because we believe they're really important, but we're also infusing some of what we do on a day-to-day basis to listen to this next generation of really important talent.
Thanks. Melody, you started a business. It's a frequent way that women sort of move forward in the world, and there are so many women entrepreneurs, but it is hard raising money. So tell us a little bit about that process of the fundraising and how that went for you.
Yeah. Fundraising, now that I'm on the other side of it, I mean, we've raised $40 million in capital to date. It's very hard in the beginning, and it was hard, especially, I mean, I launched the company in 2011, so this was a little while ago. There were fewer investors, there was less capital available, and I was fighting to show these mostly white men the importance of both people of color as a really important, amazing customer. Our customers are all throughout the United States, so a lot of them are in the South and the Midwest. This is not a trendy app just for tech workers. And the importance of the beauty industry and helping them understand that beauty is not a superficial thing. It relates to your identity, and it really relates to helping you look and feel your best to be able to attack the world and do what you want, and help you no matter what your style, no matter who you are, helping you feel as good on the outside or look as good on the outside as you feel on the inside. And that message was not easy. And I used to have a joke with my co-founder where I would say, if there's more than one bald man in the room, we're not going to get funding. And we would walk in and there'd be two and I'd go, oh, I'm trying not to curse. I'd be like, oh, under my breath. And he'd be like, it's okay. This will be a practice. Like, this is fine. Which ended up being true. I don't think we ended up raising from anyone who it's fine. But you know what, in the beginning, you're trying to convince them, and then as the numbers go up and as revenue goes up and as usage goes up, then it's really about, look at this community that we've built, look how powerful it is, and then it becomes more an easier story.
Great, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think the VC community, as we all know, is not tremendously diverse. So I think that's just a bigger challenge when you're coming in with stuff that they haven't seen or don't understand.
Yeah, and I actually recently became a scout for Clio Capital, which is a VC fund, an early stage fund led by Sarah Kunst, who is a woman of color. She works mostly with or all female entrepreneurs who are currently operating and who meet amazing companies and want to angel invest, but don't necessarily have the capital to do it on their own or the time to do it as a dedicated job. And that's been a really, really incredible experience. And the whole thing is like, I want to spot those women that maybe had that harder time telling their story, but I understand them just based on my experience and being an operator and being in this industry. So it made me really want to carve out the time to be able to do that.
Sheila, you also started a business. I heard a story that you were asked whether you were going into the pleasure or pain business early in your career. So tell us a little bit about that and then why you started Care.com.
Sure. I was in New York. Let me do the pain pleasure first. I was in New York City working at a company called The Ladders, helping people find jobs. How many people enjoy looking for jobs? It's not that fun, right? And I was going to move my family, put the house on the market, and I was looking at an elementary school. Went in Tribeca, left the elementary school, went on a sidewalk, and I just was in tears, crying. And I was like, what do I want to do? Move my family. I was fortunate that when I gave, because we were living in Boston, when I gave notice to The Ladders, I got invited by Matrix Partners to be an entrepreneur in residence. So moved back up to Boston and started developing the Care business plan. And then I asked a very dear friend of mine who was an investment banker, a very senior person in an investment bank, and we had gone to business school together. And I said, I'm thinking about this business. And she looked at me, she's like, wait, you have a JD MBA from Harvard. You've done 2 internet companies. You're going to start a babysitting company? What the hell are you doing with your career? And the reason I'd asked her for advice is because I was getting an offer to be CEO of a hot gaming company. And that's where I then went to another male mentor. They come in different forms, shapes, and sizes, And he said to me, "Are you in the pain business or the pleasure business?" And I paused. He said, "You've been all about consumer pain your whole life and your whole career, helping people save money for college, helping people find, how many people like to save? No. Helping people find jobs, and helping people find care. You know how hard that is? And it impacts all of us, right? And so it's so interesting that then I put it aside because my inner confidence was really the main issue. I didn't want to be judged as a female entrepreneur running a female-focused business. I was too worried about how I was going to get perceived versus who was I? I got to bring my whole self to work. And then to your second question, how do I start this company? I was born and raised in the Philippines. I came here for college. I got pregnant my sophomore year trying to juggle care. And then fast forward, my father had a heart attack when I was on a management team at a tech company when I'm 29 years old. And I was using the yellow pages for care. So here I was saying, well, that's really painful and millions of other families go through it. So how do I use my talent and my passion to help people? And then just to close this, my mom went to me after a year of starting the company and she said, "God, you get to bring your whole self to work." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "The #1 exporter of care around the world is the Philippines. You're doing what you're pursuing because it is in your heart."
That's fantastic. Yeah. I will say, as someone who was a single mom with a big job, I could not have gotten through the first 4 years of my child's life without Care.com. So thank you for
Thanks,
personally.
I have a 6-month-old, and I have been all over Care.com and found my person through you. So I thank you.
Jen, I have a question for you. You see a lot of C-suites, and since 1972, there have been 73 female CEOs in the Fortune 500. How do we create more room at the top for women?
7-year-old. I think that's such a big question, Lisa. And I suspect we may have one of those people in the room today, don't you think? I think we do. And, I think part of it is just really pushing through some of the major milestone roadblocks. When we look at it at Deloitte, we see it at the manager level, for example. And what happens is people leave for a variety of reasons. But then when we looked at it, we saw we were 8 times more likely to recruit a male to fill either spot. And we have men and women leaving at the same clip. And so that's one of the things. I think part of it is just understanding what each organization faces in terms of advancement of women and working through those roadblocks, those milestones, those key moments where something happens. But the other thing is, when we have these opportunities, and I think Cindy said it really well, that we have to be champions. And one of the things that we work on at Deloitte is really focused on culture. And what's the culture, what's the environment that will allow everyone to achieve their personal aspirations. It also, I think, needs to be okay to say what you want, right, and what you're trying to achieve. And we had a team kick off earlier this week that I'm working with. It's actually a team that's supporting Salesforce. And one of the things I said to them is make it known what you're trying to do. Tell people what you're trying to achieve, because we'll help you get there. So I think part of it is really pushing through some of these barriers, but I also think it needs to be less acceptable to not have multiple candidates that are either ready or interviewed for any position, including the big jobs.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think when I referred to the Rooney Rule, for those of you who aren't aware of that rule, it's an NFL rule that any head coach position has to be, there has to be a diverse slate. And I think the diverse slate is really, really important. Yeah. Same question, Sheila, how do we create room at the top?
Well, what's so interesting is the percentage. Obviously, with men, there's more of them. You know, they start 50-50. In the beginning, I talked to a lot of CEOs, and then later on, it's 87% men in the corner office. And so if you don't have enough men being proximate to the issues and understanding the plight of women, I think it becomes a real challenge, because many of us are women in the room. Thank you, men that are here. But we're all preaching the choir. We're all nodding and saying, yep, we know what needs to happen. But now I'm trying to go to more conferences where I'm speaking to more men in the room, because they have to lift women up. And they have to understand that. And many do, but they get so confused. They feel like they want to lean in, and then they're feeling like, oh, but what signal am I sending? Am I supposed to be doing that? Am I not supposed to be doing that? So we ourselves, whether you're a millennial or not or wherever, help coach male mentors how to be a great mentor, because we need more of them to help lift women up.
There's lots of different kinds of diversity. Cindy referenced that when she came in. We've been talking a lot about gender diversity, but there's also obviously racial diversity and other kinds of diversity. Half the population is now Gen Z or millennials, so we have been overtaken. And of those, 43% are non-white. So as we sort of look at this crossover, talk a little bit about the impact that this has on your company in terms of the products that you produce and how you produce those products and how you think about the consumer. Maybe start with you, Melody.
Sure. I think what we found is that millennials have a very it is very important to them for an experience to matter. It's very important for them to have meaning behind a product or behind an experience. And for us, especially when we're building a consumer app for them, there has to be a lot of engagement and buy-in. And that has to start from, for me, it started from within the organization, where anything that we build, we connect it back to, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we believe in growing the businesses of these entrepreneurs who are creatives. They're passionate about what they do. They're incredibly talented. They're in a job where they are hanging out with strangers and helping them feel good. And in a lot of cases, they're acting as therapists. They're acting as support systems. They're acting as inspirers, right? We all have relationships with our beauty professionals, our barbers, our stylists. We know. But our community is not... they are not as passionate about the business fundamentals. And so we have to do that for them, and it has to be an empowering experience. We have to make them more money, but we have to do that in a way that's as easy to use, as inspiring to use, and using a product that reflects them. And so that's very important. So we have on both the business side and then on the consumer side, we constantly have stylists in the office all day, nail artists. We're constantly bringing in, and especially the younger customers, because they use the product in a fundamentally different way, right? So we have to talk to lots of different customer segments. And then anything that we build, especially within the team, we talk about, why are we doing this? What is this going to do? How is this going to make our community feel? How would we feel in using this type of product? So it's very touchy-feely, as opposed to like hardcore, like here's the stat that we want to move. Here's the OKR. We're going to optimize for this. Let's, do top-down, bottom-up analysis. You have to do that, but you also have to understand that at the end of the day, we're dealing with people, we're dealing with artists, we're dealing with individuals. And so that has been very important in terms of how we build and grow.
I think what I sort of heard in there is, if your product doesn't reflect the community and the people who build your product don't reflect the community, it's not going to stick, because
That's exactly
it's
right.
not relevant to them. Yeah.
You said it a lot more succinctly than I did. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question. So it's time to get tactical. Give us one thing from each of you that somebody in the audience can take away to promote equality, to promote inclusion in the workplace.
So I would say, especially when I mentor a lot of women, when you go into a meeting as you're developing as a leader, I always try and encourage you to overproject and really test your influence. That's the first I. But as you learn to do that, the key question I will ask each of you is, did you impress or did you inspire in that meeting? Because impressing means you're leaving something of a thought about you in someone's mind. Inspiring means you're trying to get people to act. And action is what we really need to have a diverse world.
I love that. One thing that I think is very, very important is there used to be one concept of power, one concept of excellence, right? It was a very narrow definition of that, of, showing up at work, of how you comport yourself, of the language that you use, of how you dress, etc. And that was the case when that narrow point of view had all of the power. And I think it's very important for people to understand and to really think about within themselves. Excellence comes in lots of different types of shapes. It can come in minds that are deeply creative and inspiring, like you said. It can come in minds that are deeply analytical. The visual of what that looks like, you do not have to wear male-centric outfits. You can wear a very feminine, awesome, powerful suit or dress and still be feminine. I think really understanding and figuring out, you were saying this earlier, bringing your whole self to work, figure out who you are deeply and understand that, and make that part of your power and how you show up every day, and respect that in other people, because that is going to be what power means in the future. It is now, and it will be even more so in the future.
That's great. Jen?
I love what both of you have said. I think it's really inspiring. For me, this gets really personal because I have a 7-year-old daughter at home, and Lisa's heard me talk about her, and most of what I do, I think, in this realm is with her in mind. 10, 20 years from now, where will she be? What opportunities will she have? And I want all of those to be open to her. And I had a conversation at the proverbial parent-teacher conference recently where I was told she wasn't raising her hand. And so we talked about it a little bit, and she's not asking questions, she's not speaking enough. And so she and I talked about it, and I just let it sit for a little while. And then we were going somewhere, and she looked at me, she said, "Mom, I raised my hand today." And I said, "Well, what happened?" And she said, "Well, I became class representative." So she took that conversation and she changed it. But I think my biggest encouragement would be raise your hand, use your voice. That's the biggest thing we can do. And what's the worst that can happen? And that's really what we talk. What's the worst that can happen? So raise that hand.
That's great. Thank you. So we are at time. Please join me in thanking this fantastic slate of women, Sheila, Melody, and Jen. Well done. Thank you, women.